Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Scary Stories Told by Campfire. I'm your host, and I have another scary story for you today. As some of you might know, I've always been interested in the paranormal, and even more so when it comes to ghosts and other things that go bump in the night. I've done a ton of research when it comes to these things, and I'm well aware there are many different ways people can try to communicate with spirits. However, one method has always stood out to me as the creepiest way to contact the dead. And it's not even a method you want to use if you looking for a fun time or you just curious about the other side. No, this method is reserved for those who need to hear from the dead, who are desperate for closure or an answer, because what you are about to hear from them might be something you don't want to hear. This is a method where the ghosts will reach out to you in your dreams. I am going to tell you a story today about a voice you can't explain, a voice that will come into your dreams and bring nothing but terror. If you can't handle the truth, then stay away from this story. Now, before we begin, please make sure to subscribe for more stories like this one. Also, turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Alright, now let's begin. There was a man that had lost his wife in a car accident. The woman passed away instantly after being hit by another driver who ran a red light. The man could not save her, nor was he even at fault. But that did little to help with the crushing grief that came over him. The accident had happened for months prior to the story taking place, and the man still missed his wife terribly. His name was John, and every night he would fall asleep next to her empty coffin in their bedroom. He simply couldn't bring himself to part with her, even in death. And one night as John slept, he heard a voice. He didn't think much of it at first. He assumed it was his dog whining outside, or perhaps their old pipes were making noise again. But then he realized something. The voice was coming from inside the coffin. It was whispering his wife's name, and he knew that she wouldn't be doing that. She was a light sleeper, and they both knew how annoying the pipes could be at night. So she would always keep him updated if anything was happening. But there was no sound that could be made without moving the lid of the coffin. And yet the voice continued to call his name. He sat up, knocking the lid open accidentally. Then he froze. Sitting in the bed, looking at the dark outline of the coffin in front of him, he listened intently. The voice started again, louder this time. Was muffled, yet somehow still clear enough to hear. John, it called again. This time the name was drawn out and seemed to stretch on forever. There was no mistake about it. That was his wife's voice, even if it sounded strange and distorted. And it seemed to be coming from the depths of the earth itself. It was low and guttural. He tried to respond, but all that came out was a squeak. "Hello," he whispered, unsure if he should move the coffin lid fully. Part of him wanted to see if his wife was really there, but he also didn't want to risk angering whatever it was that had possessed her body. The voice continued to call out to him, and he eventually got out of bed and walked over to the coffin. Lifting the lid fully, he stared into the darkness of the coffin. Only his wife's lifeless body should be inside. Yet the voice only grew stronger and began to shake the coffin violently. Startled, John recoiled, hitting the coffin lid and sending it flying across the room. It landed with a thud, and the voice suddenly stopped. John fell to his knees and began crying. He looked back into the coffin, but it was just as dark as before. Had he imagined it? Was it real? Was his grief finally getting the best of him? He didn't know what to think. But then he heard it again. The voice was coming from behind him. Slowly he turned his head and saw his dog whimpering at the foot of the bed. "John," the voice said again, sounding closer this time. He looked back into the coffin, but it was then that he noticed something strange. A faint glow was emanating from inside, and he cautiously moved closer. The glow pulsed like a heartbeat, and he reached out a trembling hand to touch it. The moment his fingers made contact with the wood, the glow exploded outward, enveloping him in blinding light. He screamed as he felt himself being pulled into the coffin. Images flashed through his mind, and he saw his wife in the mangled state that she had been in during the accident. The voice echoed through his mind, growing louder and more distorted. As he fell deeper into the coffin, he woke up with a gasp, sitting upright in bed. Sunlight streamed through the window, and he was shaking uncontrollably. The coffin was in its usual place against the wall, and his wife's body was nowhere to be seen. Had it been a dream, he wondered? As he got out of bed, he noticed something strange. On the floor next to the bed, there was a small wooden box. He picked it up, and it was cold to the touch. Curiosity overcame him, and he opened the box. Inside, he found a small, intricately carved wooden bird. As he reached out to touch it, he heard his wife's voice in his mind. "Don't," she whispered. But it wasn't her kind, loving voice. It was raspy and cold, like the voice of a corpse. Startled, he dropped the box and backed away. The bird flew out of the box and perched on the edge of the bed. Its wings fluttered, and John screamed in terror. The bird opened its beak, and the voice boomed from inside it. "You shouldn't have woken me," it hissed. And in that moment, John knew that he had made a terrible mistake. What he had thought was his wife's coffin wasn't just any ordinary coffin. It was the resting place of something evil, something that had taken on the form of his beloved wife. And now it was free. The bird swooped down toward him, and he stumbled back in fear. It landed on his shoulder, and he could feel its cold, dead flesh pressing against him. The voice whispered in his ear, "Now I'm free." And with that, it vanished. John collapsed onto the bed, sobbing uncontrollably. He knew that he would never be able to rest again. It unleashed something evil into the world, and it would never stop hunting him. Well, that's today's story. Did you enjoy it? So, please leave a like. If you haven't already, then what are you waiting for? Subscribe and get notified when I post new videos. Also, check out my social media if you want to see some of the artwork I've collected over the years. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.